Okay, so today we are going to talk about leaky seals and wobbly drive shafts. So, we're going to take a look at the front shaft because I got a nice highway vibration, and I've known for quite a while that my rear pinion bearing is a little loose, and the seal started leaking. All that mud and junk doesn't really help seals very much, so let's go underneath and take a look. So today's video is going to be kind of a two-parter. So, how far do you want to dig into your front axle? Here we have our Dana 30 front axle, and I don't know if I can hold you steady enough here. Let's see what I can do. I don't know if you can see that, but our yoke actually moves a little bit. It's hard to hold you steady, but basically our yoke is bouncing around, which is causing our pinion leak as well. So we are going to replace our rear bearing seal on the back of the housing, and we're going to try and tighten up this pinion so that it doesn't bounce around so much, because this is a very big cause of highway vibration. That little tiny bit, it ain't much, but it's definitely enough. And if you leave it, it'll mess up other things like the rear. So even the this guy over here shakes a little bit. If I grab that rear shaft, it doesn't shake at all. It is completely firm. It doesn't move at all. So yeah, this one's gonna be fun. So I guess we're gonna take off these little nuts, or take off these little bolts that hold the U-joint in place, and see what we're working with. Okay, so these bolts up here are soft metal, so you're going to want a 5/16 with a 6-point. If you're not familiar with the 6-point, it only has 6 sides, you know, like a regular hex. It doesn't have the 12. I can't really get you in there, but it saves the bolt, because these bolts are real soft, and it's easy, real easy to totally either round the heads off or just mess them up. So once you take that off, then you can free your shaft. Give her a pull. Now, if you haven't done this in a while, it might take a good hammerhead or something to get that going, but she should come out. And this is a good time to figure out if your caps are just barely sitting on there with a little bit of rust, and they'll fall right off. So if you're worried about them not sticking, if they don't have good grease, then tape them or something. Alright. So now we can get a little bit better view of the pinion. Just kind of bounces all around. So in order to fix this bouncy pinion, we could check to see if this nut is loose, but it doesn't look like it. This thing gets preloaded with spacers inside, so we would have to take this yoke off, take the rear bearing off, and then remove a shim to get the preload that we want on this bearing so that it doesn't bounce. That's a pain in the butt. But we gotta do that to change the seal anyway, so yeah. Have fun. Air impact. That's the way to do this one. Okay, so we're gonna want ourselves a 1 1/8 inch socket. She's a bit of a monster. So first, I'm gonna see if my little electric impact can do it. Now, if you have to do this by hand, get yourself a pipe wrench, and either have a big enough one that can grab the yoke and sit against the ground, or put a pipe over the pipe wrench after that, over the handle, so it sits against the ground. That way you can torque on it without the vehicle moving. But impact's a lot more fun. Can she do it, Mr. DeWalt? Nope. Kind of figured. Things should be torqued on there pretty good. Air impact time. Yeah, baby. Corn tacked. I'm gonna have to hold the yoke. You're gonna be yoking me. Okay, so then we can pull our yoke off, like so. It just slides right off. So you notice that there's a star washer on here with some RTV. So the right way to do this when we put it back together would be to get a new washer. and some black RTV just to make sure that she's properly sealed. So yeah, well, now we get to knock the seal out. I'll have to clean up the surface and figure out where it starts and where it begins, but we might have to use a flathead to bend one of the sides in so we can just pop it out. Alright, finally got it. So, you take yourself a flathead and a nice big beefy hammer, and what you're going to do is you're going to go around and try to hammer a side in and keep working your way until you can actually pop it out. Now, I started hitting on it and then hit it on the side and got the whole thing to spin. So I knew it was technically free, I just had to wiggle it out. So then I hammered it in one last time and pried it. So you come in here on the side and you just hammer in until you dent it and then see if you can pry it out a little bit. I couldn't get it all the way. It would bend the metal, but it wouldn't pop it out. So I finally was able to get a little grip on here and it finally came free. So that's your whole seal right there. And there's our rear bearing. Oh boy. So if you were just replacing the seal, you could call it done and hammer the new one in. So if you needed to know what it looks like back there, there's a ridge, so you're not going to be able to get that flathead very deep in. So once it feels like it kind of stops, it's probably stopped. Alright, now for me, get ourselves a little wobbly wobbly. Now I'm hoping that we can just pull one of the pinion shims out and call it good. Put it all back together again, and hopefully have a nice tight thing. So the nice thing is we don't have to put the seal in to check that preload. We can just put the yoke back on, and then tighten it up to whatever torque spec it needs, and then see if it still shakes. If it still shakes, well then we'll take another one off. It's important to know the size and the thickness too, because we're talking like thousandths of an inch. So yeah, you'll need a micrometer if you want to do the job real properly. So let's see if that bearing actually wants to wiggle off. I know on this one I think it was a little loose, and it was possible to kind of get it to come off. If not, we'd have to take the carrier out in order to hammer this forward enough to get that bearing off, which would suck. Because that means taking the axle shafts out, which means taking all the hubs apart, which means basically disassembling the axle. And if I do that, there's a couple seals that need to be changed, so this little possible one-day job's got to turn into a couple-day job. See how far we go. Alright, so I'm trying some risky business here. I got myself one of them here propane torches, or map torch, whatever. It's hot stuff. And we're going to go in a circle and heat this outer collar on the bearing and see if we can't get this thing to come out. I actually did it once and got it to move a little, so now it's a lot looser. And I just used a flathead. I was trying to find a good like puller, something like one of these guys, but I can't find any jaws that are thin enough to fit in that little tiny ridge. The only thing that I can really do is get a flathead up in here and just kind of gently go on this and not bend the cage. But I'm going to try and heat it again once more time and then pop it like this and see if we can't get her out. Got it to move a lot. That's good. Bingo. Marshmallow bearings, anyone? Alright, so now that we got our bearing out with a little bit of heat, we can come inside and find our prize. So you see that little ring right there? That is our preload shim right there for the rear bearing. So what we're going to do is take all them out and see if we can't take one off. Get yourself a little magnete. Come in here and say, "Excuse me, sir. You have time for Jesus Christ? Thank you." Now technically we could probably just remove that and put it back together and check. But it's a pain in the ass to get that bearing on and off, so I don't know. Now, let's go over the proper procedure for setting these things up. I don't remember what the preload is supposed to be for used bearings, but usually you're supposed to measure the pinion preload. And what that means is the resistance that it takes to spin the thing. So, you're supposed to do that with the carrier out. So measuring the pinion preload is the back and forth movement. All right, so how much rolling resistance there is. For new bearings, it should be, I think, like 20 to 25 inch-pounds of torque of rolling resistance. And on older ones, it might be like somewhere around 18. But the only way to measure that is the carrier out, because you just want the pinion. You don't want the carrier to mess with that reading at all. And I'm not going to take the carrier out to do that, so that's not happening. But yeah, we could pull all them shims out and see how much we got, and then try to just take one or two off until we get the preload we want. It's just a pain in the ass pulling that thing on and off. Ugh. Here are the 3 shims that we have. Now to check their thickness, we use something called a micrometer. Now this is a fancy dancy one with a readout, so that you don't have to actually know how to read one of these things. But one-handedly is not the best way to do this. But we open this guy up, we slide our shim in there, and then this one's got a little preload thing on here so you don't over tighten it. So we're looking at about 32 thou shim right there. Okay, so we got a 32. Now you also want to make sure these are real clean, make sure there's no crap on them. And it's much better to have a micrometer instead of just a instead of one of those other thingies, calipers. These ones are just, they're more accurate. Okay, so this one's looking at about a 6, I guess. So we got a 32, a 6, and this one's like closer to like a 4. Okay, so we got 42 thou spacer right here. Now, if I think I remember correctly in my old setup video, every thou of shim that we took off added 5 inch-pounds of torque, which that's crazy. So if we were to take that 4 out, then we should be adding 20 inch-pounds, which, that's what it should be stock. So just taking out this one shim right here might be enough to fix our issue. Now this is the obnoxious thing with testing this out, is having to pull the bearing and constantly do this. If you're working on a Dana 35, it's great. You got a crutch sleeve. And if it's not tight enough, just tighten the nut down a little bit. Another 1/8 turn on that nut will tighten it down another however much, and you're good. You don't have to pull it apart a billion times. Just crank on the nut a little harder. I mean, granted, it takes 200 foot-pounds of torque to actually torque the crutch sleeve, but still, it's faster. Just give you a hernia later. Alright, well, I guess we're going to try it with just these 2 shims and see what we get. Okay, I'm going to get a little risque here. I'm actually going to take the 6 thou shim off and leave the 4 thou. So now we got 36 thou of shim total. So the shims are back there. And now we're going to put this guy back in. So guess what derp me found out? I hammered on the bearing, and I looked down at the yoke as I go to pick it up. I'm like, that looks fuck. There was a shim stuck to the actual bearing too. This is a thicker one. So yeah, we just... now there's way too much. I have a feeling. We're probably going to need just these 2 thick ones to get rid of the thin ones, but I don't know. It's on there, but it's not... I mean, it's kind of on there. So, in order to hammer your pinion back on, you can use something like this. I was lucky to find me a pipe and a pipe cap. Makes a perfect little hammer dealio to just knock that on there. I don't think it bottomed out either. Yeah, that's another 32 thou shim right there. So that's what, 64, 74 thou previously. So I think we're going to have to do those 232s. Okay, so now we got our 232s and our 4 shim in there. So that's 32, 64, 68 thou. So now we put our yoke back on, along with our pinion bearing, and we're going to torque our nut back down to whatever friggin' torque we need. So let me look up what that is. I think it's pretty big. And then we'll give her a jiggle and see if she still shakes. Alright, are you ready for a hernia? That nut gets 210 foot-pounds of torque. Alright? So, I got myself a pipe wrench on that part. of the yoke. So hopefully that'll contact this control arm and hold it in place so we can do the hard work. Oh, God. Now, my little torque wrench over here only goes up to 150. So I'd have to guesstimate another 50 some. I'm thinking I'm going to have to get myself a breaker bar and a really long pipe and just do some lifting until I feel like it's good enough. All this just to make sure that her shims are right. And if it's not, you got to take it apart, take more out, and do it all over again. Yeah, crush leaves aren't so bad now, are they? Yeah, not quite. I kind of figured. No, I didn't tighten it all the way. I probably pushed it up to about 150. I was able to put my feet on the tires like this to give me the leverage that I needed to try to push this. But there's still a little bit of wiggle, so I'm going to take off that other shim. If not, I'll have to dig around and see if I can't find the other shims and go even smaller. That's going to be a pain. Okay, so just with the those two big shims to get that 64 thousandths, that's still too much. It's still a little loose. So I went digging in my kit, and I actually still have some. So basically, I don't know, I guess I'm going to try and cut that other one in half, or maybe just take 10 off. I'll see what I can put together. But basically, we're going to try and make ourselves somewhere between a 20 and a 25 thou shim, and see if that doesn't do it. Man, that thing was off by quite a lot then. Alright, so now we got the shims separated. We got 10 thou, we got 6 thou, and we got 4 thou. So we can put them all together and do what we need. So you always want to go with the biggest ones you possibly can. So I'm probably going to do 2 10s and a 6. So that'll get us 26, which will be 6 less than what we have now with our other 32. So I guess we'll try that and move on. So that's 58, right? So now I'm going to actually start trying to check the rolling resistance. Now this is the bootleg way to do it, and actually I probably should have checked this before I started taking everything apart, but I might be able to get about the same reading by just loosening that nut up a bit. So what you do is get yourself an inch-pound torque wrench like this guy, and it's a bar style so you can actually watch this thing, because you can't use a click type, that's not going to do it. And you're going to get the naughtiest fucking adapter you can find, which is your 3/8 to 1/2 inch. That will get you in a lot of trouble if you use that the wrong way. Believe me, I know. And we're gonna hook that roll on it. We're gonna give it a twist, and we're gonna see what we read. So what we're looking for is, I guess, what we want, like 18 to 20 inch-pounds of rotating resistance with it tight compared to when it's not tight. So hopefully I got a tire jacked up over there, just enough to be off the ground. So we're going to see what we get. May or may not work. Okay, so far we've removed 18 thou, and it's a lot better. But I feel like it could be even better than this. Now again, with the tire and everything hooked up, it's really hard to tell what the rolling resistance is of just the bearing. So what I'm going to do is loosen this nut up a little bit, so that there's definitely no tension on that, and we're going to rotate this dial again. The first time I rotated it, if I try to go up, it's somewhere between like 40 and 50, but if I try to go down, it's closer to 30. So I'm going to try the down method of rotating it, clockwise instead of counterclockwise. So we're going to loosen that up and see if that number changes. If that number doesn't change, we know that there's no preload on the bearing. Okay, so it was hard to get a good reading of anything. It's hard to tell the difference. And after taking it apart plenty of times and removing shims, it was hard to notice the difference. It's hard to get a good preload reading when there's more than just the pinion in there. So, your mileage may vary. Alright, so I've made it to the point of not caring anymore. Yay! Now we get to finish the job! So, it's tight enough. It doesn't wiggle in and out at all, which is what we want. We want no wiggles. Very tight. There's like maybe a little bit of up and down. I can't really tell. But this might not be fully torqued. I wouldn't say it's a 210, but it might be above 150. But I don't know. I'm happy with it. There's like rough spots and not rough spots. I don't know if that's the bearing or what, but good enough for me. Alright, so now we take that nut off, put in the seal, and call it a day. Now, if you want to do the job properly, get yourself a new nut. If you don't care, run it on. Okay, so here's our new seal, right here, and zip the course. Numero 5778, National Oil Seal. This is the one. Oh, I got myself a big old pot kit. That's a 2-incher. Something that'll sit over the whole thing. These are notoriously a real pain in the cunnilinguals to get in. Get yourself a biggin and schmack. Fuck, I hope that's deep enough. That might not be deep enough. I figured it out. Anyway, I gotta pull that nut off.
Did you say nut?
So here's the wonderful seal. Made in USA, yes. Okay. So we can try giving her some tiny tap taps, but this is two-handed work. No way in hell I'm doing this one-handed. So you can try go around the perimeter to get her in, or we can get our homemade seal driver over here with some quack tape. Put a cap, now that should do it.
Let's see what happens.
Alright. I can get behind that. Right, beauty. Okay, so next up, you should get yourself a new one of these seals as well. It's a star washer. Now that looks like absolute dog crap. But I don't have a new one, so we're going to finish this job. Now, some people recommend to put some RTV in there. I'm obviously going to do that because of the condition of that gasket. But I got the special green stuff, meant specifically for gear oil. Just a Permatex. So what we're going to do is add a little ring in here just to get the splines. And what that does is it seals these splines on the inside so it doesn't leak through the oil, through that nut and all that stuff. So get ourselves a nice little smear action in y'all and slide it on. Call her good. There you go. That should do it. So just thoroughly coated, and that way when you push this on, when the splines engage, it'll push all the stuff to the front. So more than likely that rubber seal is still going to get pushed out, but now we put it on. All right. Oh yeah, she's already coming. And just for good measure, I might put a little on the outside too. We'll see. Okay. Once we're happy with that, put your nut on and we'll finally crank it down to 210 foot-pounds. Oh, God help me. You think I'm playing, mate? I'm not even close. Alright. So, let's see if this will do the trick. Through the control arm. Oh, God. I mean, what's the worst that could happen, right? Oh, fucker, motherfucker, motherfucker, motherfucker! Okay. Cinder block, piece of wood. Fucking thing that likes to fall all the time. This motherfucker. I used the ratchety kind because I just could not get the other one to line up. And the biggest pipe I could find that would fit in the area. Foot against bar over there and push as hard as you frackin' can. I don't know if it's 200 or not. I don't care. Fuck it. It's good. Drive shaft goes on. And just like that, we're done. Now, it's also recommended if you haven't changed your straps and your bolts in a while that you should replace them too. Yeah. Mine are good enough. They're not stripped out. They're not warped too much. So I think we can call this a job well done. But we'll go for a drive. If the drive shaft explodes and falls off, well, we know what happened. Okay, let's clean up. Alright, so here we are next day after a nice drive. All this is just old fluid I never got to clean up, but seal's nice and dry. She's looking firm. Let me put you down and see if I can shake it. Yeah, she's rock solid now. That thing used to bounce around, now it's in there. Wow. That's nice. And just to show you the difference, this is the rear. So you can just hear the difference. Somewhere in there. Transfer case bearing's a little loose. But at least now the front's good. So that's a good way to replace your seal and tighten up your pinion bearing if you want it to last a little longer. Ta-da!